Jeder Student, der ja schon das ist zwischen Classics, das alle Seiten, die what I see is that I can say,
I'll put it on the education.
Sure. Where was that? ¿Sabes qué?
I'd like to thank everyone. And our beloved Dean Franco Watkins, who made us the honor to be here today with us, will address some words to the public, but she needs to leave very quickly. Things we know in the days we're going through are very rough at the university. But I just wanted to point out that this conference, as the majority of you know, was founded back in 1948 and is considered the country's longest running literary linguistics, pedagogy, and technology conference. And there is a lot of hard work behind it before everything comes to the sessions and to this event today. And we are always very happy to host here around 500 people, both online and in person. And over the 85% of the presenters hold PhDs in their fields. This is also very important. However, last year we made a new start and we included undergraduate panel to honor undergraduate education, which is coming up, and we are happy to have a bigger one today. But before saying a lot, I would like to give the word to Ana Franco. Please give a nice welcome.
Normally I say I'm Portuguese, I don't need a mic because we speak proudly, but sometimes it's good to have a mic. Portuguese people, we usually mean, I'm not yelling, So, good evening, everyone. It's my immense pleasure to give you a warm welcome to the University of Kentucky. And it's truly a pleasure to have you all here for the 2024 Kentucky Foreign Language Conference, affectionately named as KFLC, and that was really important. Not only for language, we don't want to confuse it with KFC. Really critical. So I'm Ana Maria Tosh Franco Watkins, but they just know me as Ana Franco Watkins here. And I have the pleasure to serve as the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. Our university has a rich tradition of embracing language, literatures, and cultures from all corners of the globe. And it is an honor to continue this legacy with you all gathered here today. As we come together, we embark on a journey of intellectual exchange, focusing on literary and cultural linguistics, as well as technological studies. I'm confident that the discussions, the presentations, and I know you've had some already, and the collaborative sessions planned and that you've participated will not only stimulate new ideas, but also foster meaningful connections. And that's really what conferences is about, is the intellectual curiosity and the connection with others. I extend my heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Simeonides, with a Portuguese accent. That's gonna, the executive director of KFLC, whose tireless efforts have been pivotal in ensuring the success of this conference and its program. Let's take a moment to express our gratitude for his dedication and hard work. So I'm delighted to invite him to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker who's traveled from Finland to join us today. So welcome, and I'm so glad you're here. Thank you all once again for joining us. I wish you an enlightened and rewarding experience during your time here at the University of Kentucky.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Is it on now? No? Okay, thank you so much for these kind words. I need to now fix my microphone according to Daniela's instructions. And everything will work out well. So I have before introducing our speaker, I would like to add some remarks here. Okay, there you go. Because I would like to help. I mean, this is just an event to celebrate this conference and the fact that we are all coming together from different cultures, this big diversity. Oh, I'm sorry, we cannot use this word anymore. But anyway, celebrate diversity, understanding of different cultures. And as I said before, there are a lot of people behind the scenes. First of all, I would like to thank the hard work and guidance of the executive committee and thank the University of Kentucky, the College of Arts and Sciences, and the UK Office of the Vice President for Research. They've been very supportive. Also the people who've been working with the website and updating everything anytime. I would like to thank all the track directors for their hard work. I mean, this is the main work that's been done to approach all the people around the world and in the country and then bring them here together. And of course, putting all these panels together is hard work because before being the executive director, I was also a track director. I know what it means. But I would like to stress out that, I don't know if he's here. Dan, is he here? I cannot see him, but anyway. I would like to say that without the help of my assistant director, Daniel Batten, none of this would have been possible. Together with the help of Daniela Calvazzo, you can see her in the background behind the camera, the assistant director of Hispanic Studies, and Caitlin Young, we had an addition this year from NCLLC. They brought this conference really to another level, and this is something you might hear at a lot of conferences, but this time I could see the small details that make the big picture be even better. That's why I would like you all to give them a warm applause. I would also like to recognize the contribution to the success of this event of the following units of the university: the Department of Hispanic Studies, NCLLC, I don't see Jeff Betters, but okay. Latin American, Caribbean, and Latinx Studies Program, Ana Liberato, thank you so much. The Department of Linguistics, and the International Center. Not to forget our generous sponsors, Vista Higher Learning, of course, Monica Diaz, Jeff Betters, I mentioned it before, and Randy Sermons, who's sitting here. I was actually planning to say some words that the program was a little bit different, but the dean came and said, well, I need to go, so she addressed before, because I had some things to say in general before starting with our talk and our guest, and of course our musician. Before preparing these opening remarks, it came to my attention that there were a lot of talks at the university, in our college indeed, of maybe getting rid of the language requirement, which I thought, what? I mean, honestly, this is exactly what we do, and they want to get rid of that. So I wanted to stress out the importance of languages, but I think I can send her also the opening remarks because it was actually for our team, because we need her support for that. Maintaining language requirements in university curricula is essential for several compelling reasons, despite the temptation to remove them due to various logistical or philosophical considerations. Learning a language, I'm just letting this now to people who know about this. Learning a language fosters cultural understanding and empathy, provides students with the tools to engage meaningfully with diverse perspectives, traditions, and ways of life. In an increasingly interconnected world, the ability to communicate across linguistic and cultural barriers is invaluable for fostering cooperation and mutual respect. Also, language learning has been shown to improve cognitive functions such as problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. It challenges students to think flexibly and adapt their communication strategies, leading to enhanced cognitive flexibility and mental agility. Proficiency in a second language significantly enhances career prospects in an increasingly competitive job market. Many employers value bilingual or multilingual candidates for their ability to communicate effectively with clients, colleagues, and partners from different linguistic backgrounds. Language skills can open doors to international job opportunities and enhance one's competitiveness in the global economy. In academic fields such as linguistics, literature, anthropology, history, proficiency in relevant languages is crucial for conducting research and accessing primary sources. Language requirements ensure that students have the necessary skills to engage critically with scholarly literature and contribute meaningfully to their chosen fields. In conclusion, why there may be logistical challenges or competing priorities in the university curricula, maintaining language requirements is paramount for fostering cultural understanding, cognitive development, career opportunities, and intellectual enrichment. Universities should recognize the enduring value of language study in preparing students to navigate in an increasingly interconnected, diverse world. So these were the words that I wanted to address, not just because we all know about them, but I had the feeling that lately we've been under attack. I would say, if there is something that the university would like maybe to review so that we can make undergraduate education faster, well, what about getting rid of the math? They don't know how to count anyway. So but language, exactly for all these reasons, they think we just, teach grammar or how to conjugate a verb. This is not what we teach. And this is something people do not understand. The value of what we do is not something that generates money right away. It generates a lot of, positive things for our society in the future. And you know what I'm talking about, So we just want to live in societies where all these things I mentioned before are present. Okay, now I would like, before giving you the word, my beloved Eeva, I would like to invite here our theater techniques, our musician, our colleague, our esteemed, a very recognized guitar player. Some words about him, very quick. Some of the things I cannot pronounce very well because I'm not in the field, but he knows we work together in many PhD committees. His work spans from new music to guitar, on guitar to early music for lute, baroque guitar, and the theorbo, and can be heard on the Naxos, non-push range format. These are like when we say in our language fields like peer-reviewed journals. New Albany and Innova recording labels. Mr. Hendricks has been a soloist with Canada's New Music Concerts Ensemble, Riverside Symphony, Tito Schipa Orchestra e Lecce in Italy, Orchestra Sinfonica do Rio Grande do Norte in Brazil, Eastman Broadband Ensemble, Eastman School Symphony Orchestra, Orquesta Sinfónica de la Universidad de Guanajuato, Orquesta Filarmónica de Sonora, the University of Arizona Philharmonia. A series of collaborations and appearances. And every time I look when he's having a post on Facebook, it's because he's invited somewhere to entertain us, because they recognize his wonderful work. So before he's saying a lot of things, he's also, by the way, he's been the university research professor of this academic year. So please give a warm welcome to this nice and great friend we have here among us.
Thank you for having me here. This is, of course, for those of you who is your first time in this conference, I guess it's kind of a tradition now to have some music as part of this closing event. And so I will play a little bit of Latin American music, a little bit of classical guitar. I hope you enjoy it. And we will see with our wonderful guest speaker. Carlos Fariñas, Canción Triste, opened the set. And from there I went to a couple of pieces by Leo Grauer, like the composer, first the famous Mi Día de Noviembre, followed by his arrangement of the famous Cuban folk song, Ojos Brujos. And then I will just finish this first set with the very beautiful arrangement he made also of the Cuban lullaby, Rumenegui.
Okay, thank you so much, Dieter. Thank you for this contribution. We always appreciate your contribution here to our conference. I would like now to introduce our guest of the night. Not to forget, after the talk, there are drinks, cash bar, and some appetizers in the Galleria next door. Okay, I am very honored, very happy to have here Eeva Sippola, all over from the University of Helsinki, coming here to talk to us. Actually, we met 2 years ago in Paraguay, where we were invited to give a series of talks. And where we started appreciating each other's work was last year in Salamanca, where we were invited to give a seminar on language contact. This is where I realized that this is a good speaker for our event here. So I'll just give you a background about her work and herself. Eeva Sippola is professor of Ibero-American languages and cultures at the University of Helsinki. Her dissertation was a descriptive grammar of Hernante Chabacano, a variety of Philippine Creole Spanish, which was published in 2011. She has previously held positions at the University of Bremen, Germany, as professor of post-colonial language studies, 2015 to 2017, and then after that, she went to Aarhus University in Denmark as postdoctoral researcher. Her research interests have a broad focus on contact linguistics and critical social linguistics in the Hispanic world, in varied contexts from Argentina to the Philippines. Sippola has published on descriptive and comparative creolistics and social linguistic issues, including language endangerment, ideologies, and false perceptions. Her most recent publications include the volumes Language and Participation, the yearbook of the Finnish Association of Applied Linguistics that actually was published last year, edited with colleagues from the University of Helsinki, Post-Colonial Language Varieties in the Americas, edited with Danae Perez in 21, and New Perspectives of Mixed Languages, edited with Maria Mazzoli in 2021, and I'm happy to give you this book when she came. She has served in several positions of trust, both in her university and international settings, and currently she's president of the Society of Pidgin and Creole Linguistics. Her editorial experience includes the roles as the founding co-editor of the Journal of Post-Colonial Linguistics, associate editor of the Journal of Ibero-Romance Creoles, and board membership in several international linguistics journals. Her academic work is guided by the principles of open science and collaboration. And with that, give please a warm welcome to our guest.
I'm wired. No, I think I have to. No. I think I already have that. Let me just move my laptop. This is seamless, right? Okay. Thank you so much, Harris, for the presentation and for that invitation. It is a great honor to be here with you today at the Kentucky Foreign Language Conference. It's really a wonderful experience. It's my first time in Kentucky in Lexington, and I've enjoyed it very much so far. Today, I'm going to talk about sustainable, I of course have to put my presentation here. Yeah. I'm going to talk about sustainable methodologies for the study of languages in contact, and I will be focusing on Creoles, especially Spanish and Portuguese-based Creoles and Romance Creoles in general, where my examples come from. The aims of this talk are, it's more of a discussion than a presentation of a scientific paper or an academic paper. And the aims are to identify sustainable practices of the social linguistic data collection and analysis in the study of language content. I will focus on specific methodological and ethical concerns, on how to minimize researcher bias and influence, and how to produce research that reflects community members' language use and perspective in a sustainable manner. So not only the academic perspective we as researchers have, but how to include, I will try to find out how to include ideas from the speakers themselves. And although my examples come from real settings, these are issues that affect minoritized languages in general and can be applied to several other settings as well. The talk is structured as follows. I have the introduction here, then we will look at contact languages as minority-sized varieties, go through some social linguistic factors that affect their speaker communities, and the examples, as I mentioned, come from the Romance Creoles. Then we will have a look at the methods of data collection and analysis, some challenges and some best practices that have been identified in research. And before the conclusions, I will take you to think into my own research on the four perceptions of the Sippola varieties. And as also said in the introduction, academic work is rarely done alone. So much of what I say today is based on these papers that are given on the slide. I'm currently in a project with some colleagues from the Nordic countries where we try to figure out what sustainable linguistics could mean for our field. And then there is my work with Mary Klesho, who actually studied at the Ohio State University, quite close to Lexington. And she has been working with me in Brennan and in the Philippines on these Torokan speaking communities. Okay, let's go to the introduction then. Sustainability can be defined as the long-term viability of a community, set of social institutions, or societal practice. In general, it is understood as a form of intergenerational ethics in which the environmental and economic actions taken by present persons do not diminish the opportunities of future persons to enjoy similar levels of wealth, utility, or welfare. This is the definition given by the Encyclopedia Britannica. It is often, or sustainability is often described as having three dimensions or pillars: the environmental, the economic, and the social. Or, in other words, the planet, the profit, and the people. And in the intersection where these areas of action come together, we can find sustainable practices and sustainable development, sustainable ways of living our lives and looking into things. And I'm especially interested in the role that linguists can play in the ongoing societal discussion about sustainability. What is our role as language specialists and people working with languages in these discussions? And on the other hand, I also want to make linguistics as an academic field more sustainable. And this is exactly why I'm focusing on the methods of linguistic data collection and analysis today. The United Nations, in their agenda for 2030, has set the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This happened already some 10 years ago, which you see here. They cover different areas of life. The first one is, of course, no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, etc., etc., etc. These are not directly related to language, but if we start to think about it, language is actually an integral part, an essential part of many of these. And I will come back to this a little bit later. What is then sustainable development? What does it mean, keeping in mind this definition of sustainability that I just gave? In the our Common Future report, which was made already in '87, the Puntland Commission report defined sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So basically exactly the same thing that I just said in general about sustainability. Another central concept for this talk is contact language. What are contact languages? Well, they are often called, or subgroups of contact languages are often called Pidgins, Creoles, mixed languages, multi-ethnolects, especially in European cities, post-colonial and indigenous varieties around the world in former colonial areas, etc., etc. And these definitions stem from historical linguistics, partly because contact languages challenge the model of genealogical development that we have for languages. They do not fit in the language stream model of language internal development because the external contact has been changing and influencing them in such a great degree. And they thus pose a challenge for historical linguistics, how to explain for this contact influences. On the other hand, we can also define them on social linguistic grounds, as we do today for Creoles, for example. As languages, there is little agreement about the structural properties of Creole languages in the world, but we know that they were all, most of them were born in the colonial era in settings that involved very unequal demographic groups and power relations between these groups. And of course, language contact is present in many other situations as well, not just when we talk about these contact varieties as such. I am here speaking in English, which is not obviously my first language. You might notice some influence from my other languages in my speech. And when talking about speaker communities, about speech communities, we have, of course, situations of language maintenance, people keeping their heritage languages, their original languages, for example, or shift when they change to another dominant societal language. So these issues, although I'm here using examples from real situations, can be applicable to many other situations of language maintenance and shift as well. Okay, so if you are interested in Creole languages and Pidgins, I recommend you visit avisonline.info. This is a typological project created some 10 years ago. The Atlas of Pidgin and Creole language structures online. It is also published as a 4-volume collection by the Oxford University Press, but this is an open access resource with exactly the same materials that are in the printed books. And my examples come from the languages that are here on the map, marked in orange. These are the Spanish contact varieties. The languages marked with the red dots. These would be the French-based Creoles. And the languages marked with yellow, which would be the Portuguese Creoles and Portuguese contact varieties. And as you can see, these Creole languages are often spoken in geopolitically remote areas in tropical regions of the world where trading and colonial expansion was quite strong. And Creole languages are, for their social histories, marginalized varieties, spoken geopolitically remote areas, as we just saw on this map. So it depends on where you're looking from, but they're often spoken on islands or in coastal locations quite far away from the capitals as well, not just talking about. They are also of relatively recent formation, and this is, of course, we have a large historical span here, so they were born under the colonial era, which seems far away, but if you look at language development, we are talking about thousands of tens of thousands of years when talking about genealogical, historical linguistics. So in that sense, they are of recent formation. They are often spoken by transplanted communities, whose ethnic identities have been described as less focused or more diffused in the traditional nationalistic sense, where many national standard languages are based. They also often lack autonomy with regard to their lexifier. They are understood as a variety of the lexifier, although they can be in linguistic terms defined as languages on their own. They cannot be understood by the lexifier because lexifier here would be the language giving the lexicon to the Creole. So for Spanish-based Creoles, it's Spanish. For Portuguese-based, it's Portuguese. And this lack of autonomy can be seen, for example, in the naming practices that we have. We talk about broken Spanish, broken English, corrupted Spanish, something that we hear quite a lot when talking about the Philippine Spanish Creole. Or you have the common denomination Le Creole for the French-based Creoles, although these are also very different languages. So from the point of view of the French speakers, these might be grouped together. And the speech communities, some or the majority of these speech communities are also marginalized in political and economic terms. And this makes these languages especially relevant for the Sustainable Development Goals because of the political and economic marginalization. So, of course, poverty is an important thing. I've marked here as far as some of the areas of action that I think are very relevant for Creole-speaking communities. And linguistically speaking, especially quality education and the reduction of inequalities would be central. Okay, so let's then continue with content languages as minority-sized varieties. I will go through some factors that affect Creole and contact situations, and then give some examples from the Romance Creoles world. An important factor that is, of course, not only relevant for Creole-speaking communities is diglossia. These communities are often characterized by multilingualism and an asymmetric distribution of functions in the societal domains. So we have the L varieties, the Creoles in this case, which would be the vernaculars without any official or very few official or public functions. And then we would have the H varieties. These often are the lexifiers or other colonial languages or other national dominant languages. For example, Portuguese Creoles in Africa, in Cape Verde, are in diglossic setting with Portuguese, with standard Portuguese, European Portuguese. The same happens with French Creoles. In Haiti, for example, we have a small elite speaking French and great masses of population speaking in Creole, and the education system is mostly in French. So children go to school in a language that they don't actually speak at all. And the similar cases for the Indo-Portuguese Creoles of Tamandu, where the communities speak the Creole varieties, but then official functions, the church, education, etc., happen in Portuguese, or the local South Asian languages. For the Spanish Creoles, we have Chavacano in the Philippines and Opiaquistan in Malaysia, where the situation is somewhat different as the local national standard languages, Malay and Filipino Tagalog, are in the H variety position. And I want to mention the exceptional case of Papiamento here, which actually enjoys high prestige in the ABC Islands in the Caribbean. And in some degree, it could be said to exist in a diagnostic situation with Dutch, but as Dutch is not the lexifier language, and Papiamento has this high prestige on the local community of the islands, the situation is not that straightforward. But as they say, an exception often proves the point of what is happening in other situations. And something that should be mentioned, especially for the Indo-Portuguese Creoles and Chavacana, is of course the global power and reach of English in these countries. India has English as an official language. I'm sure that the Philippines actually do have 2 official languages, Filipino and English. So we shouldn't forget these major global languages. Often for the Creole settings, we also find a continuum in place as for any language situation, where we have language varieties ranging from those most to least similar to the dominant standard language. And this variation also presupposes a social continuum between the different texts. So social values, social indexes are connected to these varieties that exist in the continuum. And here, the researchers' power over what is considered authentic language, an authentic variety that we should be studying, that we should be using as examples in our studies, is very important. As selecting one variety is authentic, Creole data can lead to serious bias in data selection and our analysis and the results we get. In addition, language ideologies and prestige, these big social attitudinal areas of action require special attention. The metalinguistic norms in the communities and the prestige relations between the varieties govern language use, as we know from social linguistic research in general. And therefore, it's relevant to find out which languages the community members speak as their first or second language, or their degrees of competence in different varieties, where they acquired these languages, and what the functional divide between them is. So even before we can start working with our contact language data, we have to collect a lot of social linguistic information and background information. Research has shown that it's difficult to access Creole data, especially when the lexifier, the dominant language, is used as a working language. This is because the standard language is often the default left in formal contexts, such as interviews or data elicitation sessions, and that the dominant language is also used to show one's social profile and standing in this setting. There is a good example from Hugo Cardoso, who was working with the new Indo-Portuguese community, where he explains that the new Indo-Portuguese speakers may speak very cautiously or ashamedly, or even switch to another language, for example, English, when interacting with a person associated with standard Portuguese. So, of course, Portuguese researchers are interested in what happens to Portuguese language, and they are also interested in these contact varieties, but they might not be the best person to be working on this due to these social problems that this might create. Similarly, the ethnic background of the speakers can affect perceived traits of the language. And an example from Cape Verde comes from Nicola Kang, a researcher that has worked on dialectal atlases of the Cape Verde Islands. He describes how perceptions of ethnicity and race are affected in the use of Africanisms, so African lexicon, in Cape Verdean communities. In the island of Santiago, for example, one young speaker judged that the Africanism jambu, feel compassion for someone, could not be used on her island because the population there had a Portuguese origin. However, the dialectal survey made showed that jambu is commonly used among elder speakers of the islands. So the social perceptions of this speaker invert her view of the language and lexicon used in her. Another general area which creates a major problem for data collection is language engagement and taxation. So when we are losing in situations of language shift, when we are losing the community language. This is the case in Cavite in the Philippines, which is one of the communities that I will be talking about, in some French Creoles in the Caribbean, and in the Portuguese in one of our codes. So mostly the Portuguese varieties, actually. This means that we have a lack of fluent speakers across different age groups, which has effects on particle design. If we want to do social linguistic sampling, for example, we cannot get a whole generational divide because only older speakers speak that language. Research has also shown that we have a reduction of the degree of internal variation found in the language data. So not as much variation happens, or not so many forms are used that might have been used before, because the language is not actively being used by the community. Okay, so let's now look at what we can do with data collection and analysis based on this general background of the general social linguistic factors. First of all, ethical research is something new. It's not an invention by me, it's not an invention by sustainable methodologies. It has been around for some time already. And it has also been explicitly recognized as a name by John Rickford, for example, in his 97 article. But it is not always explicitly formulated when linguists start to work with real communities. However, this is not only an academic concern, as research might have effect on the status and situation of the community, as we heard all know. And I believe, and my colleagues believe, that researchers should reflect on ethics, social political relationships, and power dynamics at every stage of their work with these communities. Multilingual context settings also affect our work, of course, and our understanding, our view of how we understand the language. Because often in these settings, there happens alternation between languages and varieties and codes in the speaker's repertoires. So we have different, depending on the perspective that we want to take, we might call this borrowing or code switching. Take a diachronic perspective, we call it borrowing. Take a synchronic perspective, we call it code switching. Some other traditions prefer terms as transfer, or imposition, or convergence, etc. But actually, what should be kept in mind is that it is artificial to extract a language from the multilingual practices of the speakers. And this is not, or let's say in social linguistic research, we know this, but it is not a tradition of methods comes from somewhere else. So we have built our methods working on this idea of a language that we are describing or analyzing. And our solution to this is the use of ethnographic methods and participant observation over a long period of time, and trying to reach an understanding of the community in its social, historical, and cultural context. And this cannot happen in a field trip of 2 weeks. It requires a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of cooperation with the community. And this is because outsiders' access to Creole data is difficult, or is challenging, as the Creole is often reserved for spontaneous in-group interaction, and in talking with outsiders, speakers naturally switch to some acrolectal variety that they know will be understood. Or in the Philippines, when people speak to me in Creole and then they raise their eyes and look at my face and they know I'm not from the community, they immediately switch to English, because that's what they do in their everyday practices. All the time they're negotiating the codes and repertoires that they put in use. What are the best practices then in minimizing outsider effects? Where research from Romance Creoles shows that data collection in peer groups works pretty well. and using or cooperating with local community members, for example, so that they record their own interactions without the presence of the researcher. Has proved to be useful. This, of course, means more work for the researcher when they start to analyze the data, as it is quite easy to transcribe something that you have been participating in a conversation. For example, you know what happened, and there might be only one person speaking, but when there are 10 people speaking at the same time, terms overlapping, etc., it requires, again, many resources and a lot of time. Participants observation and interviews is another standard, golden standard in social linguistic research, and this means, as I already mentioned, long time commitment to field work and the participant observation, because this gives us access to more unguarded language use situations, and it also minimizes ideological effects. Once we know, we have an understanding of the historical and social context of the community, we can become more aware of our own ideological preconceptions and also what's happening in the community. What are the best practices for interviews in real settings then? Well, first of all, being aware of the specific type of interview as a culturally marked format of communication and its adaptation to local contexts. Group sessions and community members as interviewers, as I've already mentioned, and a selection of contextually and culturally suitable topics for the interviews, and a general awareness of the effects of text types is also very important. So although in descriptive or social linguistic work, we, well, let's say linguistic and descriptive grammar studies, imperial studies, we often do elicitation. We want to focus on some specific structures. This is very problematic, especially because of the research results. Social linguistic surveys, another standard method which allows us to collect large amounts of data in relatively short time, can provide insights into local attitudes towards language use. But it must be kept in mind that an accurate assessment of speaker preference or competence in language production and comprehension cannot be based solely on subjective self-reported use. And this kind of survey data should always be contrasted and checked against the data obtained using other methods. Okay, so what is the take-home message of what we have just seen, this overview, this discussion of the methodological aspects of working with content in content settings? Well, maybe this can be summarized in the title that you see here: the data collection never happens in a vacuum. It should follow best practices in linguistics in general. These languages are no different in that sense. They are just languages as any other language. But it should be kept in mind that contact language situations are especially affected by ideologies, social histories, power imbalances, and the continuing blurring boundaries between the varieties. Okay, let's then travel to the Philippines and look at this case study of the folk perceptions as a way of overcoming some of the biases that we have as linguists when working in contact settings. Here you have a picture from the marketplace in Ternate, which is one of the communities where I've done most of my research on Chabacano varieties, the social linguistic research. Chabacano is a common name for the Philippine Creole Spanish varieties, and with this look into the study, I want to add a localized perspective on the relationships between Ternate, Cavite, and Zamboanga Chabacano. These are the main communities, main varieties that have been studied in the past 50 years. And it's based on a paper that I wrote with Mary Flesher some 10 years ago, where we used our methods from perceptual dialectology that were adapted to multilingual field settings. On the map, you see on the northern island of Luzon of the Philippines, You have three communities of Ternate, Cavite, and in Manila, also the capital, there used to be a historical variety in it. The largest speaker community of Philippine Creole Spanish is in the southern Philippines, in Zamboanga, in the Zamboanga Peninsula, where the Creole has hundreds of thousands of speakers. There are also some endangered historical varieties in Cotabato and Davao, on the plains in the island of Mindanao. These varieties are of different, they have different levels of language vitality. Some are more endangered. And for example, in Cavite, which is located about 35 kilometers southwest from Manila, the variety is severely endangered, and it has less than 4,000 speakers, maybe not 3,000 speakers, in a city that has more than 100,000 inhabitants. All speakers of Cavite Chavacano are bilingual in Chavacano and Tagalog, which is also the basis for the main national language, Filipino, and most are also fluent in English. They're highly educated and also speak the other national language, so official language. Spanish is no longer commonly spoken in the Philippines, and there is only, let's say that the Creole speakers don't speak Spanish either in their everyday lives. The functional domains of Cavite Chavacano are highly restricted. It is mainly used at home, and the majority of fluent speakers are of the grandparental generation or older. Maybe you can be older than grandparents. This picture is from my first field trip to the Philippines in 2003, already 20 years ago. How time flies. And as you can see, these are the active members of the Chavacano Association, all of them quite like beyond 50, some 20 years ago, so most of them are not with us anymore, unfortunately. Chavacano scholar, local Chavacano scholar there with the blue, green flower shirt with Yamato was also active back then. In Ternate, which is another town in close to Manila, Chavacano is spoken by some 3,000 people, also a small number, but the town where it's spoken is not that big. It has about 25,000, maybe 30,000 inhabitants nowadays. This is not far from Cavite City, but it is a more rural area. And here, Chavacano is in numbers a minority language, but it is associated with the traditional local community. Up until some years ago, one couldn't become the mayor of the town without having Creole foods, like without being a speaker coming from a traditional Chavacano family. Although they don't call the variety Chavacano in this village, it's just called Baja, which comes from the Spanish name of that locality. All the Chavacano speakers in Ternate are multilingual in Chavacano and Tagalog, as well as other languages. And Spanish is not spoken, and this variety can be characterized as endangered, but relatively stable, as it still has intergenerational transmission. So these children are still, or were still some 10 years ago, learning the language at home. The third community that I will be looking at is, or where we call it data, is Zamboanga, the largest community. And here the situation is quite different. It is the lingua franca of the Western Mindanao region, with over estimations from about 300,000 speakers of all ages to almost 1 million. I would say 1 million is too much, but hundreds of thousands of speakers. It is also supported by the local and national government, and is used in elementary schools as part of the Philippines multilingual education program. It is also widely used in local media and pop music. So the situation is quite different. We were not able to do field work in Zamboanga because of the political situation back then, but we collected data using other methods that I will discuss in short. And for our study, we asked these research questions. We wanted to know how the different communities believe their languages to be and not to be related, what kind of linguistic variations they know this, and what kind of social meaning they attach to this variation. And how do they feel about other languages spoken in their communities beyond the Creole varieties. The methods we used was, of course, this periodic fieldwork spread over 10 years in both communities in Ternate and Cavite. We did a lot of participant observation, participation, and elicitation of data, also other kinds of data. We have over 100 social linguistic interviews from the community members, and in Cavite, Marie Glescher also for her dissertation made a map labeling task where they used this kind of drawn map where people commented on kind of what they marked, what they thought, what was spoken where, and how it sounded there, etc. And also we did online surveys that were distributed in Cholocano networks through Twitter or X, or what is it called? Yeah, back then it was Twitter. And there you have our kind of publicity of that survey. So who is there, Cholocano? Please come and take this survey, and you will be surprised. And then we got 25 answers, mostly from some. And of course, during our field work in Cavite and Ternate, we had cooperation with the community members and native speakers of Cholocano as interviewers. What were the challenges that we could identify while doing this study? Well, we had very different access to the communities, depending on the community and also who we were. I came from Finland. I don't have any connection to the Philippines. My colleague, Marie, is of Filipino background, so she was received in a different way. But then on the other hand, in Ternate, when I was living in the town, I could hear Cholocano every day, and like the speakers were not dispersed in this large population, so it was easier to get access or make friends in Ternate. Let's just put it that way. It was quite difficult to find younger participants. But we found our ways. That was not possible in Cavite. There were some children going to language revitalization classes where this happens. And of course, we also had the challenge of how could we make use of this data that was so different. Some data collected in field work and some through surveys and of different numbers, etc. But we believe that different field work and combining methods can help to overcome these challenges. And our careful comparison of these data types actually yielded consistent results. In all the communities, the varieties were believed to be mutually intelligible but distinct. They had local languages, but they said, hey, I can more or less understand what they're saying. I will not go into the discussion of why this is, but let's say the pragmatics have a lot to do, and of course that common setting, having Filipino languages in wonderful stuff. There were also similar beliefs about which phonological and lexical features distinguish the varieties. And in all communities, Spanish was perceived as prestigious, and local Philippine languages were seen as a threat to the vitality of these community languages. And interestingly enough, although English is also widely used by everyone, by large sections, English was rarely mentioned. Nobody noticed it. Its prestige somehow protected it from this acting as a threat. And also in all the communities, some kind of an idea of what is pure Cholocano was seen as an identity marker in each community. Here are some examples of the kind of things that people mark. So again, we have phonological and lexical features that are used to distinguish them. They use prepositions. What kind of expressions do they use to say that there is no more fish or without fish? They say like that in Cavite. Or I cannot play sound sample to you now, but when talking about Ternate Cholocano, there is a very nice example of how they imitate the intonation from a different locality. Or even straightforward comments that, okay, the traditional family, old rich family, where relatives speak with a lisp, making reference to the Spanish, Peninsular Spanish pronunciation of Teteo, saying that it sounded really authentic. And in a similar way, Spanish was perceived as prestigious and local languages as a threat, as I already mentioned. Very positive comments about Spanish, negative comments about the Philippine languages and the mixing with them. Although this is, of course, how the languages were created, they were mixed with Philippine elements, so it is quite interesting to see what's happening here. And these mentions about who is a pure, authentic Tagalog speaker are quite common as well. Okay, we don't have time to go into detail into this discussion. It's very interesting, and you can look up the article if you're interested in that. But what my point here is that these were the insider perspectives. What do the outsiders, us linguists, had said before? Well, previous Java studies have tended to focus on a small set of morphosyntactic features, like the pre-verbal markers that are central for the definition of the Creole typological class, and theoretical debates on the historical origins of the varieties. There is very little focus on linguistic variation in and among these Creoles, something that all the speakers recognize, and there is very little work on features that are salient to the speakers. And we believe that overlooking these complexities in how speakers classify and assign prestige to the different language varieties spoken in their communities is really a problem for our field in Creole studies. We concluded that applying these Creole perceptual dialectology methods to Creole and content language settings allows us to avoid relying on our own assumptions about language classifications, prestige, and authenticity, avoiding this research bias. It also helps us to identify potentially interesting linguistic variables to study, as the pronouns, for example, to the pragmatic values, and to examine language ideologies, the social linguistic level of what is being done with language. That might influence how people speak or make language planning decisions about the vitality of these varieties. It also allows us to work ethically by including speaker perspectives in our analysis, and helps us to provide a more holistic view of the linguistic structure and social linguistic situation of the language. And this is, of course, not the only solution, but it is complementing data obtained through other methods such as elicitation experiments and process observation. Okay, so summing up, coming to my conclusions. I will first say something about Creole settings and then come back to sustainability. So, as we have seen, as with any other type of language, Creoles in content languages should be studied using carefully selected methods that are applicable to our research questions. We have to take steps to ensure ethical and sustainable research, and we have to have a commitment to participant observation and participatory research. The social histories, prestige, asymmetries, and multilingual settings of Creoles require special consideration in the study of how they vary and change. Language attitudes and ideologies also affect the development and structure of content languages. These can be studies combining and contrasting several methods, as we have shown, and they provide insights into speakers' mental linguistic systems and the general situation of the communities. And these are, as I already said in the beginning, insights are generalizable to other minority-sized language situations with similar prestige in continuing settings. And coming back to the three areas of sustainable research or sustainable linguistics, I think these sustainable methodologies where we try to get the community perspectives in dialogue with academic discussions and questions that interest us can be reached by balancing the three dimensions. This means localizing into the community, taking these power imbalances and histories into account, having the community perspectives by cooperation, not only in the design of the project, but also through the methods that we use, for example, using perceptual methods, and also taking into account economic research use of our academic research, which is unfortunately not often the case. We are not given enough resources to spend long periods of time in the field of linguistics. Unfortunately, to build sustainable, durable relations with the communities. And with these kind of methodologies, I think we can create holistic approaches to bigger problems, these kind of complex problems that are at the intersections of different development goals and these areas of action where sustainability is built. And I would, of course, like to end up by thanking the communities that have supported our field work. Some of the collaborators or people that we have worked with are there. I would like to especially mention Johnny Bosa, who's no longer with us, but a great Otavakano activist and scholar from Tecnate that has been very supportive of my research and kind of introduced me to the community. And also to our fellow Creolists and content language specialists that are mentioned here that have helped us in making many references available and talking about their experiences in working with social linguistics in Creole settings. Thank you.
Thank you, Eeva, for this interesting insight. I think we can have some time for maybe 2 questions, because I think the drinks are waiting, the food is waiting. And I think also for the ones who are raising their eyebrows, and I'm looking to those ones, would you like to move, because it's getting very hot in here, we cannot control the climate in here. Outside is very nice. So any questions, please?
Okay, thanks so much for the wonderful presentation. While talking about the method of data collection, you talk about the fact that it was difficult to get data because the people easily switch their languages deliberately. And in this sense, I would like to know, is it not possible to use an insider way of collecting data from them so that they are open to the people and ready to, or with that impact the data collected in any way? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question, and we know exactly that would be the best practice in having community members work on the languages and the data. Yes.
Yes, thank you again for this presentation. I was wondering if you could elaborate some on what you mentioned and how this sort of research with these sort of methodologies can contribute to developing holistic approaches to these problems. Examples or elaborate.
Yeah, here I would like to refer to a project that Michel Lebras has actually been in MIT. I don't know if he's able to have it at this very moment, but he has had it for a couple of years now, which is actually using Creole language to develop the education system, or kind of, I don't know, what would be the English word, to kind of make the education system more accessible to the children, and that way, with the language, actually we get better learning results. That means a great change for everything, for cognitive skills of the children, their learning experience, what they can do in the future when in first years of schooling, for example, they can use their own language. So that would be a very practical example of what I understand as sustainable linguistic research. And it hasn't been trendy within Creole studies as a field, so this is also kind of a critical look at what we have done as Creolists before in our field.
Any other interventions, questions?
Gracias por la presentación que ha sido muy rigurosa en términos metodológicos. Tengo un par de preguntas que creo que me he perdido. En la parte de la economía en relación a las... Oh.
Okay.
Termino en español y luego la parte de economía en relación a la sostenibilidad.
En la sostenibilidad.
Sostenibilidad. Eso me quedó un poco, no lo entendí muy bien. Y lo otro es, si uno de los problemas mayores para obtener data de participantes de lenguas minorizadas es la confianza que tienen en el entrevistador, en la persona que obtiene la información, ¿cómo juega el término de la confianza en este modelo?
Tal vez tornar a frase porque sí que es técnica. So, I think,
I think I can
yes.
kind of integrate the question into my answer. So it was about the economic dimension of this. Well, I would like to start with the linguist's perspective. What we need for having this kind of durable cooperation, for creating the confiance, the trust with the speech communities is of course time and resources. And from the academic point of view, that's why I would like to talk to the dean or the dean in Helsinki, that this is what we need. We need money put into fieldwork or bringing community members to our universities. It doesn't always have to be the linguists going to the community, we can also work in other ways. But this cannot be done without economic resources. This is one point. The second one in the sustainability model perhaps is it is not evident, it is not there at the first sight. It's a long-term goal, and I would again use the Asian example of education. While we have new generations that receive a better level of education, are more knowledgeable about the world, this will also turn into an economic gain for the country in the long term. So I think there are many levels of the economic dimension. And I very much like the aspect of trust that we brought into the discussion. I think it's very important, and that's why it's holistic. It needs to be, in order to be able to talk about different problems, different challenges, you have to trust your audiences, you have to trust the community, you have to be able to show your vulnerabilities, your problems to the person that you're working with, for example. So thank you for that. I really liked it.
Any other question? Please.
Thank you for a really interesting talk. I'm going to assume that most of these queries are oral. Like,
Yeah, some are also written, but yeah.
and that makes my question is sort of how does the fact that we're talking about primarily oral languages complicate the matter, especially when they're pitted against the prestige language, which is, a written language. How do establishing grammars,
Or establishing even orthographies.
how does that factor into the research and sustaining and preserving? I know a lot of work has been done in French Creole and Martinique, for example, of standardizing, so that reduces the imbalance, the official imbalance. So certain exams can have be taken in Martinique Creole, or that's sort of a general question.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Of course, we can create orthographies, but if the speakers don't see a use for writing their language, they don't necessarily start writing it. We have, for example, the case of Jamaican Creole, where there's a lot of academic research put into creating a writing system, but as societies, politicians, and even language speakers are not that open to writing into native, because English also opens standard English, writing standard English opens more opportunities if you come to the United States to study and so on. But yeah, so there again, not a simple answer to your question, but maybe I would like to point out that the Chavacano Creoles in close to Manila, in Ternate and Cavite, they are not, or in Ternate, they are not written. People don't normally write the Creole. But if you ask them to write, they have no problem. They will either write with the Tagalog system, the Filipino system, or with the Spanish system if they happen to know Spanish, if they went to school and had a class of Spanish. So they don't necessarily attach writing system or an orthography to a language. They think of it as an additional skill that they can apply to any language. Like I could write Spanish or Finnish orthography, which is quite funny in itself. That would be a good solution. So I would also like to question our view of, do we really need to write all the languages? I don't know. We can write all the languages, that is not the problem, but then there are many economic resources involved in that as well. So, yeah, I don't know. A good question and important point raised.
Okay, thank you so much again, please. Thank you all for being here. I would suggest the volunteers open the doors of hell and we go over to the drinks. Thank you.